Hey everyone, it's Eric with FirearmTutorials.com, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about chemicals and tools for cleaning guns. What you see in front of me is pretty much everything I've got, minus a few things that are here and there, but this is the majority of the things I use. Some of them I use more than others, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I use and which things I use for cleaning, which things I use for just general protection, and some of the tools and brushes that make things easier. More often than not, I usually wear these Black Mamba gloves. These are actually, my mechanic uses these to work on cars, and so he let me have a set of them, and I started using them for working on guns, and they're really strong. You don't have to worry about these tearing apart like you do with normal just surgical gloves because the outside of them is so tough. The only way you will manage to rip these is from the inside if you have long fingernails, but from the outside I've used wire brushes and even Dremels and stuff, and it doesn't get through them. So I use those gloves almost every time I start to clean something, and it keeps all these chemicals off my hands and they just don't get pretty much dirty at all. Another thing I use, which I'm actually out of at the moment, are these Hilco lube wipes, and these are primarily used for cleaning tools and things like that, stainless steel, but they are really tough and durable. They don't rip, they don't shred, and they've got a decent amount of cleaner on them, so I can pretty much use one or two of these and clean an entire gun, and it'll get the majority of the carbon out, and they're pretty easy to use. Of course, they're kind of flexible because they're fabric, so you can get in all the little nooks and crannies pretty much of any gun that you could imagine. Some other things that I'll use if I don't use the wipes, or if I have just something that's really, really dirty. This Hops number 9 works pretty well. The only bad thing about this is it's pretty, how do I put it? It's got a real strong odor to it. So if you're going to use this stuff, just make sure you're outside or, have some type of good ventilation. This particular bottle doesn't have any kind of dispenser. It doesn't have a spray or a dipper or anything like that. So usually when I use that, I just, will use some Q-tips or some other way to apply it. But it does work really well. Some of these other cleaners I have, like this Gunzilla, this is actually Copperzilla. This is meant more towards cleaning barrels and stuff, where you'll have like some copper fouling from Full Metal Jackets. So I don't use that too much because I actually really don't have that problem much. It'll clean lead too. If you're shooting lead bullets out of your barrels and you've got some lead buildup in there, this will work pretty well. The only downside to this stuff is it's very expensive. Same thing with this. This is not specific towards copper, but the Gunzilla is kind of just another CLP, and these are actually made out of plants, so they're not near as bad as the Hops. I mean, this has a slight odor to it, but it's just a kind of a different scent to it, so it doesn't bother your nose as much. What have I got? The Rem oil and the gun oil. I don't use those for cleaning. This bottle I usually keep in my range bag, just if I have a gun that gets really dirty that I haven't cleaned, or I'm shooting suppressed and the gun gets really dirty, I'll just put a couple squirts of oil in there, and that'll usually get me through the rest of the shooting session. The Rem oil is about the same thing, but you can spray it down into the little crevices or down inside your receivers, to whereas the gun oil itself is just meant to apply as drops. So kind of do two different things there. Another cleaner I like to use is the nitro solvent. This I use usually before I use the hops, because this does have a slight odor to it, but it's still not as bad as the hops, and it works really well. Some of this other stuff, like the Flitz stuff, is meant more towards kind of just cosmetic cleaning and polishing. So there's kind of a wax here, which is pretty much just like car wax. So the idea is you kind of just clean it off with this, or polish it with the Flitz, and then apply this on here. I'm in Florida, so it's really humid here, especially in the summer. So if I have guns that are just going to sit in the safe that I'm not going to shoot much, I use one of these silicone cloths. And this is basically just a cloth with like some grease on it that will kind of keep the metal moist so that you don't acquire any rust on it, even if it's just a little bit. So it kind of protects it from that if you're going to store it, or if you're in a really humid environment. Now, as far as the brushes and things used to clean the insides, clean the receivers, a couple different brushes here. This is just your everyday run-of-the-mill nylon brush. Nothing special about that. I usually use these on just like polymer frames and stuff. If there's dirt from your hands that gets in there, you just kind of rub this through, and obviously it doesn't leave any kind of marks on the plastic. So not too good for cleaning like the inside metal parts, but for the outside plastic parts, it does well. This is a copper brush. It's not quite as abrasive as the harder metal brush, but this is kind of in between the two of them, and it works well for some outside parts, receivers and stuff, where it's just got a little bit of grime. You don't need to really scrub at it, but you just need something a little more abrasive to speed up the cleaning process. That works well. The brushes themselves, there's a couple different ways to go about this. So these are kind of some more durable nylon brushes that can be used to clean out like the inside of your chambers. I mean, it's not that long, so you kind of can just go right down the end of the barrel, like in a shotgun. If you've been shooting slugs and there's a good amount of lead buildup several inches down the business end of the barrel, this works well because it's not too long, but it's just long enough to kind of get down in there and gives you a good amount of cleaning ability without going all the way down the barrel or having a long cleaning rod sticking out the end of the muzzle. So that works well. Obviously they come in a couple different sizes. I had a kit that came with pretty much every size you would need. Then you've got, like I said, the Q-tips work pretty well depending on what gun you're cleaning and what size muzzle and all that. The bore snakes really help out a lot. I wouldn't say they work as well as some of the more complete ways to clean a barrel, but for the amount of time it takes, it does a great job. So you'll see on these, this is for a 45, but it's got these little teeth on here. These are just brass bristles. So it's meant to go down in there. It's a little bit thicker than the barrel itself. So as you pull it, it's going to get some rubbing on the material here, the fabric material. Then it's going to hit the teeth here and kind of clean out any fouling. So I usually just give these a good run, 3 or 4 times down the barrel, and it cleans out like 95% of the stuff. This is a 22 caliber one, so I use this for 22s, 223s. Some of them are longer than others depending on the caliber, but they're pretty easy to use. And the reason I like using those is the alternative is kind of a long, drawn-out process. Basically, you have a cleaning rod like this. This is the short end of it, but through a couple different extensions, it gets long enough to go down a 16-inch barrel or longer. And you've got this jig on the end here, so what you usually do is just stick this patch on the end, You jam it down the barrel with, you know, some gun oil or nitro solvent or whatever cleaning agent you want to use down the barrel. And then you either end up using, replacing this jig with, you know, a brush of the appropriate caliber, or sometimes you can use a soft one like this, depending on how dirty the gun is. But at the end of the day, you'll still have to run a series of these patches down here to kind of clean out anything that the brush is, you know, knocked loose. And it's just kind of a tedious process because you end up putting some of the cleaner on here, then you run it down the barrel, and then the patch is dirty, you pull it off, you put a new one on, and you end up doing that 8 or 9 times until, you know, the patches don't look near as dirty as they did the first time. And that's great, but like I said, it takes a long time, and, you know, I usually don't let my guns get that dirty between cleanings that I have to go through that whole process. Usually the bore snake does, like I said, a good enough job that I don't have to do that. Depending on the gun, you've got some proprietary cleaning tools like these little brushes that go in there. This is a tool for cleaning an AR-15 bolt carrier. I'll cover that in another video, but you know, that's pretty much it, guys. So if you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.